Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay, coming to you from our studio, the McClatchy offices in Washington. In 2006, John Paulson, who ran a big New York hedge fund, Paulson and Company, went to Goldman Sachs and said he wanted to bet against the housing bubble, thinking it was going to burst. He asked Goldman Sachs to put together a big package of mortgages and go find someone to bet that the bubble wouldn't burst. Well, the bubble did burst. Paulson made billions of dollars. And on Friday, the Securities Commission charged Goldman Sachs with fraud for not properly disclosing to the other side the nature of the deal. Now joining us to unravel all of this is Greg Gordon from McClatchy Newspapers. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
So Goldman says, look, we're all big boys. There were big boys on both sides of this deal. Nothing wrong with it. And the Securities Commission says, no, it's fraud. So what is the Securities Commission's case?
Well, my take on this, Paul, would be that the SEC is trying to chart a future path for enforcement, and that this is basically a test case. They're trying to see if they can draw some bright lines about what disclosures are required in some of these very sophisticated deals, even those that are offshore in the Cayman Islands. And in this case, Goldman put together what's called a collateralized debt obligation, or a CDO. And in these CDOs, they had very sophisticated investors, banks, insurance companies, other companies that were very experienced in investing, and they did put together very sophisticated deals.
And that's part of Goldman's case, that the people that lost in this deal are some European banks and others who know how to do this kind of thing. We're not talking, grandmothers who don't understand the market.
That's right, and there's going to be a big debate about that, and the lawyers are going to fight over it, because what happened here is that Paulson allegedly was given an inside role in picking what mortgages were going to be part of this deal. And so they picked a bunch of subprime mortgages, which are loans to marginally qualified or even unqualified borrowers. And Paulson had a pretty strong conviction that these mortgages were going to go sour. And so allegedly, according to this suit by the SEC, the investors on the other side, including the company that was managing the deal, weren't told that Paulson was going to bet against these mortgages. And so these other investors put up $1 billion, and Paulson bet the other way without the knowledge at the time of these investors.
Now, Goldman's claiming these investors had as much or more input than Paulson into what got into this package.
That is Goldman's response, that they had the final say. The suit says that the bulk of the mortgages that were used to place these bets, they weren't actually acquired by the CDO. They're just used, I think you gave an analogy before we were chatting that this is like a horse race. People sitting on the side betting on which horse is going to win.
Yeah, because they don't own the horses. Somebody else owns the horses. Somebody else owns the mortgages. We're just gambling on the results.
The horses are mortgages, and they're just tracking them. And so you're betting at the peak of the housing market, the peak of the bubble. You're betting on these crummy mortgages, which ultimately would be downgraded to junk. And the SEC is saying, well, the investors had a right to know who was involved in picking these mortgages, and that if a company that was going to bet the other way was the one submitting these mortgages for approval by the manager of the deal, that was an obligatory disclosure that should have been made.
Now, one of Goldman's defenses is that Goldman itself in this package bet long. In other words, betting that the bubble wouldn't burst. And so Goldman's saying, well, we lost all this money, so how could we be guilty? But there's an important point left out of the Goldman statement, which is how much bonuses did the individual Goldman people involved make? Maybe they didn't give a damn whether their own firm lost money if they cashed out with their bonuses.
These are things we don't know. These are things we don't know, but there's a young man who appears to be at the time of this deal about 28 years old, and he's sending emails to his friends saying the building's going to collapse at any time. But I'm going to win on this because I'm the Fab, which is his name, Fabrice Touré. I'm the Fab guy who put these deals together, and God knows what's going to happen with these monstrosities. But the real significance here is that this is the first case after a long lull in which the SEC has stepped forward and taken on one of the giants of Wall Street. In fact, the biggest giant on Wall Street in Goldman Sachs. And the SEC is essentially sending a message to Wall Street that they're going to make Wall Street accountable for what happened in this financial crisis that has taken the global that has caused a global recession.
Well, I guess we'll find out whether this is a one-day propaganda news story or a really serious indictment that they plan to really try to get convictions, and I guess that's yet to be seen.
Well, the SEC is definitely ramping up for more, so I think we probably are going to see a lot more than just this one case.
And we hear the sirens in the background. I don't know if Goldman will hear sirens soon or not, but we'll find out. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you
for joining us on the Real News Network, coming to you from the McClatchy offices in Washington.